أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. In today's video, inshallah, we're going to discuss the Tajweed rules in Surah Al-A'la. So we're going to get started now. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى.
In this ayah, we begin with Sabbih. Well, of course, there's a shadda on the ba. Make sure you observe the shadda. Hism. Here you have an hamzat wasl, a hamzat wasl. This hamza, this alif right here without any hamza on top of it, and it has this small sod sign on top of it, is something that we would normally eliminate, especially in the middle of a word. It's the same type of alif that we have right here. It's called a hamzat wasl. So because it is easily eliminated, that's why we don't pronounce anything that has to do with it. All we do here is go straight from the ha with the kasra to the sin with sukoon. Sabbihis, hisma. That's how we pronounce it. So you don't say anything about this alif. Just as we're used to dropping it when it comes to the alif and lam, same thing applies here. Even though this word begins with it, it's in the middle of a sentence. Therefore, we skip over it when we read. Rabbika, ra has a fatha, so it is heavy. Al-a'la, the lam here is lam qamariya. The ruling is idhar. You have to make it clear. At the end of this ayah, there's an alif maksura. This alif maksura is a natural mud that is extended for 2 counts. Next ayah.
الذي خلق فسوى.
In this ayah, we have the first word, alladhi. Alladhi has a lam shamsiyya at the beginning of it, but this lam shamsiyya cannot be, the lam shamsiyya is not a lam that can be removed from the word. So we say in Arabic, lam shamsiyya, idgham shamsi, la yumkin tajriduhu anil kalima. There is no way to remove the lam shamsiyya from the word because it's embedded in it. But we still recognize that it's a lam shamsiyya. So of course, if it's lam shamsiyya, then you merge it into the letter that comes after. In this case, that second letter is also a lam. So it's already been merged. That's why this lam has a shadda on top of it. Alladhi, I'm sorry, right here. That's why this lam has a shadda on top of it. The ya here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Khalaqa, kha is a heavy letter. It has a fatha, so it's heavy on the second scale. Qaf has a fatha, it is also heavy on the second scale. Fasawwa, the shadda on the waw must be observed. We should not be rushing to apply this alif saghira here, natural mud extended for 2 counts, and then skip over the shadda of the waw. So make sure you observe the shadda before proceeding to the alif mud. فسوى. We can listen to it one more time.
الذي خلق فسوى.
There we go. Next ayah.
والذي قدر فهدى.
الذي has already been explained in the previous ayah, so we don't need to go over it. قدر. The qaf here has a fatha, so it's heavy on the second scale. The dal here, if you listen to the recitation of the shaykh, you can hear the pause because of the shadda. قدر. You have to pronounce both dals. It's very important that we observe shadda wherever we find it. Ra has a fatha, it is heavy. فهدى, alif here, alif صغيرة, is natural mud extended only for 2 counts. Next ayah.
والذي أخرج المرعى.
In this ayah, الذي has already been explained. The only difference here is it is followed by a word that begins with a hamza. Therefore, the mud at the end of الذي is no longer going to be a natural mud. It will become mud jaiz munfasil, the type of mud that you can elongate up to 4 or 5 counts. So it's permissible for you to shorten it up to 2, or you can elongate it up to 4 or 5 counts. Akhraja, kha is a heavy letter. It has a sukoon and it's preceded by a fatha. Therefore, it is heavy on the second scale. Ra has a fatha, so it's heavy. Al-mar'a, lam here is a qamari lam. Lam qamariya idhar. Qamari is the ruling, which means you make it clear. Ra has a sukoon, it's preceded by a fatha, so we treat it as being heavy. And the alif at the end, just like the other ayat, and for the most part of this surah, the ends are always going to be mad tabi'i, extended only for 2 counts. So I'm not going to repeat those for the remaining ayats. Next ayah.
فجعله غثاء أحوى.
فَجَعَلَهُ. Here we have this small wow. It's called wow صغيرة, and it is mud sila sughra, the smaller connecting mud. This mud you will find at the end of a word that ends with ha, the domir pronoun for third person singular masculine. And if the letter that comes after that domir pronoun is not a sukoon or some other rules, it has its specific rules. But anyway, this mud is mud sila sughra. It is only extended for 2 counts. Gutha'an. Here we have ghain is a heavy letter. It has a dhamma, so it's heavy on the 3rd scale. Between the hamza and the fa, there's an alif, and all of this is in the same word. Hamza is the last letter of this word. Therefore, the mud rule here is mud wajib muttasil يمد بمقدار 4 أو 5 حركات. It is required for you to elongate this mud, and it is a connected mud because they're both in the same word. The mud letter and the reason for the elongation beyond 2 counts are both in the same word. So you elongate it for 4 or 5 counts. Ahwa, the only thing here is the alif at the end, and we already discussed that this is natural mud extended for 2 counts.
سنقرئك فلا تنسى.
Here we have a qaf with sukun preceded by a dhamma. It is heavy on the 3rd scale. The ra has a kasra. It is light. سنقري ri. فلا تنسى. فلا, alif here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Here we have a noon with sukun followed by a sin, and the ruling is ikhfa, to hide the noon into the sin. So you hide it and you hold the gunna for 2 counts, and the ending is the same with all the other ayats. Natural mud extended for 2 counts. I just realized now that I skipped over this tanween right here, followed by a hamza. Of course, the ruling here is idhar. Idhar halqi. You make the tanween clear. غثاء أن أحوى. Next ayah.
إلا ما شاء الله. إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى.
Here you have illa, shadda. Again, whenever you see shadda, make sure you observe it. The alif here is a natural mud extended only for 2 counts. The alif here is also a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Sha'a is one word. Therefore, the mud here comes before the hamza, and the mud is wajib muttasil. It is required for you to elongate it to 4 or 5 counts. The word Allah, we describe it as lafdhul jalala, لام شمسية إدغام شمسي لا يمكن تجريده عن الكلمة. So the lam in the word Allah is a shamsi lam, and you should merge it into the second lam. That's already been done for us. We also mentioned that you cannot remove that lam shamsiya from the word, just like we couldn't remove it from alladhi. We also cannot remove it from the word Allah. The term Allah is referred to as lafdhul jalala. Lafdhul jalala, the statement of glorification. Rough translation. Another thing that should be mentioned here, this lam of lafdhul jalala is mufakham. It is heavy because it is preceded by a fatha. So if you listen to the recitation again, you would hear إلا ما شاء الله. The hamza here, and then Allah. That is how to make the lam heavy, the aw sound. إنه, noon here is a حرف غنة مشدد يغنى بمقدار حركتين. It is a letter that has غنة, and the غنة is held for 2 counts. The waw here is similar to the waw up here. It's called mad sila sughra, the smaller connecting mud, and it is elongated only for 2 counts. يعلم الجهر. الجهر, lam here is lam qamariya. The ruling is idhar. The ra here has a fatha, so it is heavy. Alif here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. يخفى. Kha is a heavy letter. It has a sukun and it's preceded by a fatha, so it's heavy on the second scale. And at the end, of course, as with all the other ayats, it's a natural mud extended for 2 counts.
ونيسرك لليسرى.
Here we have a scene with shadda. Make sure you observe the scene. Ra has a dhamma, so it is heavy. Lil yusra. This first lam here is harf jar. This is speaking of Arabic now. The second lam, however, is a lam qamariya. So even though you don't see that hamzat wasl at the beginning of it, it's because of this lam that was introduced into it. But this lam here is still a lam qamariya. So we say lam qamariya hukmuha al-idhar. The ruling is to make it clear. Ra has a fatha, so it is heavy, and the alif at the end, as with all the other ayats, extended for 2 counts.
فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى.
Here we have فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. First of all, Ra has a sukun preceded by a kasra. We treat it as light. In nafa'ati. Noon with sukun here is followed by another noon. The ruling is idgham bi ghunna. You merge and you retain the ghunna. The ghunna should be held for 2 counts. In nafa'ati. الذكرى, lam here is lam shamsiyya. Ruling is idgham shamsi. You merge it into the dhal. Make sure when you pronounce the dhal, you hear both. نفعت dhikra. Make sure you pronounce both dhals. The ra here has a fatha, it is heavy, and the alif at the end is the same as the other ayat.
سيذكر من يخشى.
Here again, dhal has a shadda, سيذكر. سيذكر. You hear the for the dhal with shadda, and you hear the k, right? The kaf has shadda, so make sure you hold it to show that there are 2. سيذكر. There's a pause. Okay, Ra has a dhamma, it is heavy. Noon here is followed by a ya. The ruling is idgham bi ghunna. You merge and retain the ghunna, and the ghunna is held for 2 counts. Kha is a heavy letter, it has a sukun and is preceded by a fatha, so it is heavy on the second scale. And alif at the end is the same as all the other ayats. All right, the rest of the surah.
ويتجنبها الأشقى.
Here we have nun with shadda in the middle of a word. It has a ghunna, so you hold the ghunna for 2 counts. وَيَتَجَنَّبُهَا. وَيَتَجَنَّبُهَا. All right. The alif here is a natural mud, extended for 2 counts. However, we don't extend it in this case because of what comes next. What comes next is a lam qamariya, idhar qamari. We make it clear. But because this is an alif mud and we have a sukun here, so there are 2 sukuns. Because this is an alif mud, we drop it. So we go straight from the ha with the fatha to the lam. وَيَتَجَنَّبُهَا الْأَشْقَى. So you go from the ha fatha to the lam sukun. Hal. Ashqa, qaf has a fatha, it is a heavy letter, it's heavy on the first scale. The reason it's on the first scale is because this alif maqsura here makes it a little heavier. So qaf has a fatha followed by an alif mad, therefore it is heavy on the first scale.
الذي يصلى النار الكبرى.
Alladhi was described in the second ayah and the third, so there's no need to go over that. Yasla, Sad here has a sukun and it's preceded by a fatha. It is a heavy letter, so it is heavy on the second scale. Yasla nara, just as I explained for yatajannabu hal ashqa, where we drop the alif here, we're going to drop the alif here as well and go straight from the lam with fatha to the noon with shadda. Before the noon with shadda, we have lam shamsiyya, and because of course it's already merged into the noon, we don't need to, we're not going to be pronouncing the lam. So yaslanna, yaslanna. The noon itself is a light letter, it has a shadda, so you hold the ghunna for 2 counts. Observe the alif natural mud that is here extended for 2 counts, and the ra has a fatha, so it's heavy. Al-kubra, lam here is a qamari lam, The ruling is idhar to make it clear. Ba is a qalqala letter since it has a sukoon, so we make sure we pronounce the qalqala kuba. And then ra has a fatha, it is heavy, and alif is just like the other ayat, natural mud extended only for 2 counts.
ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا.
Here we have mim with a shadda, so it's حرف غنة مشدد يغنى بمقدار حركتين. It's a letter that has غنة, it has a shadda, so you hold the غنة for 2 counts. لا يموت, the alif here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Wow here is also a natural mud extended for 2 counts. فيها, both ya and alif are natural mud extended for 2 counts each. ولا, alif here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. يحيى, alif at the end is also a natural mud extended for 2 counts.
قد أفلح من تزكى.
Here we have qaf with a fatha. It is heavy on the second scale. The dal is a qalqala letter because it has a sukoon. So we say qad, qad. Aflaha, there's nothing to be said there. Man tazakka. Here we have a noon with sukoon followed by a ta. The ruling here is ikhfa, ikhfa haqiqi. You hide the noon into the ta and you hold the ghunna for 2 counts. The kaf has a shadda, make sure you observe it, and the alif at the end is a natural mud extended for 2 counts.
وذكر اسم ربه فصلى.
Here we have ra with the fatha, it is heavy. And again, we don't mention the hamzat wasl here. We go straight from the ra with fatha to the sin with sukoon. وذكر اسم, وذكر اسم. Ra again here has a fatha, it is heavy. Here we have the ha, the damir pronoun, followed by a ya saghira. So this is mad sila sughra, just like the wow that we did in the previous, in the first half of the surah. Here it's a ya, elongating the kasra. So the ruling here is mad sila sughra, yumad bimiqdar harakatain. You elongate it for 2 counts. Rabbihi fa, rabbihi fa salla. Sad is a heavy letter. It has a fatha. It is heavy on the second scale. Lam has a shadda. Make sure you observe it. فَصَلَّى. Hold the lam before saying the fatha of it. And then you have the alif, natural mud at the end, extended for 2 counts.
بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا.
Here we have bal. Lam here is called lam harf. It's lam al-sakin, lam al-harf, حكمها الإظهار. So the lam here has a sukoon. It is the lam of a harf because bal is a harf. Hal is the other harf. There are not too many of them in the Qur'an. And we make the lam clear. تُؤْثِرُونَ. The hamza here has a sukoon. So be careful when you pronounce this hamza not to allow any airflow or sound. تُؤْثِ, تُؤْثِ. The wow here is just a sit or chair for the hamza. So don't elongate this dhamma. The wow is not for elongation. It's just a chair allowing the hamza to sit on it. The ra has a dhamma, so it is heavy. The wow is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Al-hayata. Lam here is lam qamariya. Idhar qamari is the ruling. You make it clear. Here, the alif saghira is sitting on the wow. So the alif is what matters. It's elongating the fatha. So al-hayata is what we read this as. Do not pronounce the wow. It is just a chair for the alif saghira. Ad-dunya, lam shamsiya is what we have here. You merge it into the dal. So the ruling is idgham shamsi, merging. Dal has a dhamma. There's nothing to be said there except that you should observe the shadda. Noon with sukoon here is followed by a ya. When we learn tajweed and we learn the rules of noon as-sakina wa tanween, we learn that whenever a noon with sukoon is followed by a ya, the ruling should be idgham bi ghunna, except in 4 words. Ad-dunya, like we have here, is one of those exceptions. So we don't merge the noon into the ya. Instead, we make the noon clear. If you merge it into the ya, it will be lost and we will not know what the word is. It would sound like ad-dunya, dunya. Now, dunya is a different word. It's not ad-dunya. It's different. So we don't want to change the meaning of the Quran, of course. In those four exceptions, ad-dunya, sinwan, qinwan, and bunyan, you make the noon clear, even though it is followed by one of the letters that normally would allow you to merge the noon into it. So we make the noon clear. Ad-dunya, the alif here is a natural mud extended only for 2 counts.
والآخرة خير وأبقى.
Here we have وَالْآخِرَةُ. First of all, the lam here is lam qamariya. The ruling is to make it clear. The hamza is the letter that comes after the lam. Now this hamza comes between the lam and the alif. So the alif that comes after the lam is actually a mad badal. It's a exchange mud. And this mud is elongated only for 2 counts. Kha is a heavy letter. It has a kasra, so it's heavy on the 5th scale. Ra has a fatha, it is heavy. Kha again has a fatha, it is heavy this time around on the 2nd scale. Ya is a harf al-lin because it's preceded by a fatha. Ra has a dhamma, dhammatain, so it is heavy. And then we talk about the tanween being followed by a waw. When a tanween is followed by a waw, the ruling is idgham bi ghunna. You merge it and hold the ghunna for 2 counts. Ba is a qalqala letter, so you say ab, wa abqa. Qaf has a fatha, it has an alif after it, so it is heavy on the 1st scale. And the alif, of course, is only natural mud extended for 2 counts if we stop on the ayah. If we don't stop and we continue, then we will consider this hamza after this mud letter. This will make it mud jaiz munfasil, which would be permissible for us to elongate beyond 2 counts into 4 or 5. That's the reason this particular alif here has a wavy sign. It's taken into consideration. If you choose to continue reciting without stopping on this ayah, then the hamza that comes after it would affect a change in the elongation of this mud. The second to the last ayah.
إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى.
Here we have nun harf ghunna mushaddad, yughanna bimiqdar harakatain. The nun here has a shadda, you hold the ghunna for 2 counts. هذا, the alif saghira here and the normal alif here are both mad tabi'i, natural mud extended both for 2 counts each. لفي الصحف. Here there's a ya mud here, but we don't pronounce it because the lam here has a sukoon. It is merged into the sad because it's lam shamsiyya, idgham shamsi. However, iltiqa is-sakinain, because of the iltiqa is-sakinain, the meeting of 2 sukoons, we eliminate this mud letter here, go straight from the fa with kasra to the sad. La fissu, la fissu. Be careful not to make the fa heavy. Don't say la fi'u, la fissu. No, fa is light, la fi, la fissu. It's the sad that is heavy. The sad has a dhamma, it is heavy, it's on the 3rd scale. Al-ula, lam here is a qamari lam, the ruling is to make it clear. The hamza here is on the alif, so it is not a mud letter, it's actually the hamza we're concerned about. The waw afterwards, on the other hand, is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Likewise, the alif at the end is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. The last ayah.
صحف إبراهيم وموسى.
Sad is a heavy letter. It has a dhamma. It is heavy on the 3rd scale. Ibrahim. Ba is a qalqala letter. Ra has a fatha. It is heavy. The alif saghira here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. The ya here is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. Wa Musa. The waw is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. And likewise, the alif at the end is a natural mud extended for 2 counts. This brings us to the end of Surah Al-A'la. Inshallah, in the next video, we'll be discussing Surah Al-Ghashiyah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.